Hi guys, welcome to TGS. We've got Simon Reinhold sat with us today again.
Yeah, nice to be back.
About a year and a bit ago, we did one of my favourite videos we've done. Not we, but collectively as a channel, and I think a lot of you will agree, Over Reliance on technique. We sat down for 5 minutes that turned into 40.
45 minutes or 40 minutes, yeah. But it was enjoyable.
It was very enjoyable.
We covered a lot of ground.
Yes, and I think a lot of people took a lot away from that. I took a lot away from that.
I'm glad.
So we're here again a year and a bit later to do a sequel.
Okay.
Discuss somewhat.
Further steps.
Further steps in not relying on technique.
Yeah.
We spoke about flow state.
Yes.
Go and watch it. There you go. And now you've watched it, let's carry on.
Okay. So yeah, we expanded a bit on some of the other aspects of game shooting that go beyond the just mere killing of pheasants and partridges and just the mere pulling of a trigger and standing on a peg and going through the motions, because I believe there's more to it than that. You can access different parts of your character, and there really is no hiding place on a peg. If you are a selfish bastard, it is going to show. If you are kind and generous to your friends, that's also going to show. So there really isn't anywhere where you can hide your inner self when you start driving pheasants and partridges over people, because for some people a switch flicks in their head and they reveal their true selves.
It's very true.
And it's very obvious as well, especially when you do a fair bit of picking up and stand behind the line. You get to see and compare and contrast different guns and their attitude and how they play the game, how they conduct themselves, and how they behave in a team. Because game shooting, you are part of a team. It's a little bit like cricket in the fact that there is a solo performance aspect to it when you're batting. Mm-hmm. But in the field, you are part of a team and you will have to perform as a team. So that does translate over into game shooting as well. And you have to function as part of a team.
Well, you are a line of guns with a line of leaders. It is a communal hunt by all accounts. And you are there to try and shoot some birds between you.
Yes.
It's not me.
And enjoy each other's company as well.
That's quite important, I've heard. Yeah, it's
and you know, and be a decent human being to be around when you're part of that team as well, which is why shooting with your friends is always an enjoyable experience. Shooting with people you don't know is an enjoyable experience as well.
It certainly can be.
But it can go wrong, as we know. When you do find one of those characters who is overly greedy or who is dangerous, even worse.
Boastful.
Yeah, and it can have an effect on the rest of the team and their enjoyment of the day. And actually, I think it's something I said in the first film that we did, is that the enjoyment of those around you matters arguably more than your enjoyment, especially if you're standing with somebody on a peg as well, because some people find that really, really distracting. My young son comes loading with me, well, they both come loading with me occasionally, and I have learned I've taught myself not to have that as a distraction, to enjoy their enjoyment more than my own.
Yeah.
And that actually is, because some people really detest their host standing with them, or the shoot captain standing with them, or the head keeper who's running the line in front
that position
standing
before
with them.
being told to, can I be alone? You go, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But for me, it's always not been a turn on, that's the wrong word for it, but I thrive off it, and I enjoy it twice as much being with someone. And I'm lucky to have Sasha stood with me a lot, and I'm lucky to share pegs with people, because I feel like that does just add something to the day for me. Yeah. But I'm not egotistical about my performance, because I don't care about being a good shot.
This is a good, well...
Because I realised that no, that's wrong to say. Yeah. I do not base my self-worth on my ability to shoot.
That's the better way of putting it.
Yes. Yeah. Because I do care about how I shoot, but I don't...
You should, because
you're
taking a life and you want to do it. You want to do it cleanly and efficiently and as humanely as possible. So you should care about your performance.
I want to look good doing it. Yeah. I want to look like I know what I'm doing, and I don't want that for other people. I want that for myself. Yeah. Because if I look good doing it, given that a lot of what I do is on camera, I can look back and be happy with what I've done, knowing that it's come together. But I can't remember where I was going from the start of this, but it's nice to have people with me. I thrive off of that.
I do too now, but I didn't always. And I had to teach myself how to, it's not conning yourself, but it's giving you that language in your brain that it's their enjoyment matters more than yours. And that you have to be able to cope with the fact of someone standing with you, because if you can't, if that is a situation where you have to have someone standing with you, you're going to fall apart, and you don't want to fall apart in any situation.
So it matters who they are.
Well, yeah, but it shouldn't. You should be able to cope with whoever it is. But it was interesting for me when we did a video Sorry, referencing old past videos, but we did one of our videos at Eriswell Lodge.
That was subsequent to the podcast.
It was,
Yeah.
yes, and it was a moment I'll remember because we came out of the cage and I'd missed a fair few of the very, very edge-on crosses.
It was a warm-up session.
It was, and you said to me, you shot that completely different to how I thought you were going to shoot it. And I suddenly realised that I'd gone in without any kind of plan at all. As is clay shooting, you need to have some kind of plan to tackle that target as to where you want to kill it. And I wasn't focused on that at all. All I was focused on was the fact that Sasha was pointing a camera into my right ear. And that was a complete distraction, and I hadn't planned for it, and that was something I had to then go away and address. You know, now, after X many years of shooting, you're still finding areas where you're uncomfortable. You should find areas where you're uncomfortable, and you should develop, and you should get better. That was one recent one for me, where I suddenly went, there's a camera in my ear, this is going to be on YouTube in perpetuity, this is going to be weird, you know, and all of a sudden my brain processes have completely changed. And now we have done a bit since, and it doesn't happen anymore. But it did then. So it happens to everybody.
Yes, and being filmed for the first time is a pressure that not many people understand. I've said this a few times. It really isn't. And I forget, because I've been doing it a while.
Yeah.
And when you see new people and they come in, naturally show-offs don't get affected.
No.
Because I think they just thrive off it regardless.
Yeah.
They just feel like it's
love
extra
the attention. Yeah.
But I think, and I wouldn't say show-offs about people by any standards. Most of my friends are. I think it's an admirable trait in moderation.
Yeah.
But those who are perhaps more conscientious, you watch them crumble.
Yes.
And it's interesting.
And it's the point I'm making is that even at the beginning of your shooting career, there will be lots of areas where you feel uncomfortable. But as you get more seasoned in your shooting career, you'll still find areas where you will feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
And that is an opportunity for you to grow as a person, just to face and overcome the things that make you feel uncomfortable. That's, you know, a lesson for life as well as game shooting. Mm. So.
Anyway, moving off of point one, which was quite a large segment. Being on peg, being with who you're with, being a decent person. Where were we before this?
We were talking about good decision making and right action in the field, and how
not being able to hide on peg.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, not being able to hide your true character out there.
That's how this started.
Yeah, it is, and it is very interesting watching people reveal who they are. When you start driving pheasants and partridges over them, and you see all kinds of different individuals and all kinds of abilities. But even at different varying stages of your ability, I mean, if you're an expert shot, then you should be able to make very good, very quick decisions about what is and isn't a challenging sporting shot, what is and isn't too high or too low. You should have that, ability to make split-second decisions very, very quickly. But when you're a beginner, you need to, your level of ability will come down. So your ceiling of ethical shooting, you'll be taking lower birds typically because you're not really able to tackle the stuff on the edge of your range. And everybody has a limit to their ethical range.
Yes.
And that changes as you go through. So it's understanding the fact that as long as you make a positive decision for the right reasons, then those reasons are good.
And I suppose the more experience you have, the quicker that correct decision making comes into place, and the less opportunity there is for making a bad decision.
Yeah.
Not that shooting a lower bird is a bad decision.
Not necessarily. No, it depends. I mean, grouse shooting, they're not typically terribly high, but that's not the point. You're beaten with speed. You're not beaten with height. You're beaten with speed, angle, and ability to cut across the wind, curl a feather, and go all of a sudden completely different direction at double the speed that they were going. So, and it's the same with driven English partridges that we are lucky enough to do around here. I have a pupil of mine at the moment who I stand with, and he is very fortunate that he gets to shoot driven English partridges, and I'm teaching him about how to give himself more time, because you are beaten with speed and you are beaten by starbursting wild birds who know the safe exits out of a drive because they live there.
To a Frenchman.
Exactly. This is not your standard driven Frenchman. Booted off a cliff. This is fast, wild stuff, and it's thrilling to do. But he was doing very, very high level game shooting at quite early on in his career, and he needs to understand that he needs to be able to look through that hedge line to understand what flag movements mean in the beating line, and understand what sounds the birds are making as they're coming to get ready, because if you don't give yourself that quarter of a second extra, you're nowhere. And he's getting it, which is great to see. But it's different in different stages. It's not all about, you'll see lots of high pheasants on all kinds of social media stuff, way up in the sky, coming down, and it's great, and isn't that a fantastic shot?
Phone footage and camera footage. Yeah. It can be extremely deceiving.
It can be, but and some of it's very impressive stuff, but that is not the be-all and end-all of game shooting. It really isn't. There's so much more to it, and you have to be prepared to go out and find the enjoyment about roughing down a hedge with a spaniel and booting that cock pheasant out that's been running for 300 metres, and all of a sudden it decides it's going because it knows where the safe bit is, and you have to be in the right position, and you have to read your dog, and you have to be able to, your dog has to get downwind, and all those things have to come together for you to be able to put that pheasant in the bag and therefore in a pot. That is great fun. That's how I grew up shooting. So it's brilliant fun.
Going back to the flow state that we spoke before, that essentially, sort of taking what we've spoken now, is making right decisions for correct and good action quickly and subconsciously is flow state.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's not overanalyzing those decisions. It's not overanalyzing mistakes. It's getting on with the job of the task in hand in front of you in a fluid, rhythmic style with complete relaxation and total enjoyment and absolute focus at the same time. And it's a wonderful place to be. When you can tap into it, it is like nothing else. Those who've been lucky enough to be into it in any sport, to be honest with you, have that experience of serenity in their actions, which is, it's so lovely to be a part of. It really is. And you can get it in all kinds of different areas. I wrote a piece on years ago about how to access those parts of your brain that go into flow state by simply making a cup of tea, which is not a hugely complicated action because we've done it tens of thousands of times. But actually, when you break it down and analyze exactly how many pieces of, exactly how many steps there are to the fridge, exactly how you want that sugar to move from the bowl into your cup without dropping a single grain. If you tried to control that, it would all go all over the place. But if you do it smoothly and fluidly, it all goes into the cup. Yeah. Because you are practiced and because it's subconscious, those muscular movements don't need any control. That number of steps to the fridge to open the door doesn't need any control because you've done it hundreds of thousands of times before. Yeah. All of that, and when you go through those processes and you end up with a lovely cup of tea at the end of it, the perfect cup of tea to your liking, however you like your milk and sugar, you've done it all subconsciously without any thought, completely rhythmically and fluidly, and that is a very simple exercise you can do in your kitchen to practice getting into the flow state. Yeah. Just enjoy that process. You put me on to Flow Research Collective Radio. I did, yes. That is a fantastic podcast that you should go and listen to if you care about this kind of thing. And they speak about a broad range of peak performance things. They speak to loads of experts on it from various angles, and it's fascinating. It is, yeah. And I'm about to share the only good piece of information, the only bit of conversation I have. And I stole it from that podcast. And this is what flow state is, or part of what it is when you have a new memory, and I'm probably saying this wrong, so you go and listen to their 300 podcasts, and you might pick up it from an actual doctor. When you do something new, you are carving new thought processes, neurons through your brain. Yes. That is quite hard. It is. So when you're in a car crash, which if you're unlucky enough to have been in a car crash or a fight, you are processing something at a much better flicker rate in your brain, if you like. So you're writing down all of those things. It's carving these new things into your brain. That's why you remember a car crash vividly forever and ever and ever. If you walk back from your car to go and check the door's locked because you don't know, because you do it every day, and then you walk back to your car and you go, I can't remember whether it was locked or not because I've just checked for the second time. That's because you've carved out the pathway in your brain until it is a super highway. So it just, stuff can flow down there. Yeah, and you can flow state locking the door. Yeah, and again, for researching an article I wrote on neural pathways and performance in sport, there's some very interesting science as to why that happens in your brain, because it's like water flowing over rock, essentially, is the Zen way of looking at it, is that pathway gets deeper as the water flows it over the limestone. It carves out that channel and gets it bigger and deeper and stronger, and the flow gets stronger. The way it happens in your brain, as I understand it, is that the more you practice an action, not only does your muscular strength and endurance improve, and your brain starts devoting more of the body's nutrients to making those muscles do that task well, your brain starting to use neural pathways that have a myelin sheath around them. And very much like your muscles build up, the myelin sheath that protects those pathways builds up around it. And much of that comes from meat and protein, funnily enough, because it's a protein that the myelin is made of. So that's good for us meat eaters. Vegans probably don't get that so much. But
vegans can't get into flow.
Who knows? I'm sure they can, but anyway, sorry. So those myelin sheaths become almost like insulating electrical cables. They're insulating those cables. The signal gets stronger. There is less distortion. There's less leakage from those cables. That is why that improves over time.
Likely to last longer, but like riding a bike,
exactly.
If you do something again and again.
So it's a combination of processes. It's not only muscular, it's not only emotional, but it's also neurological as well.
It's wild.
It is. When you get deeper into this stuff, and the combination of the spiritual and the scientific is really interesting stuff about how we as humans get, because we're capable of extraordinary feats. I mean, of endurance, of skill, and all of these things combine. And there are, training programs to enhance the athletic ability for, almost any sport. But it is, the more you get into it, no one's really done it with shooting, as far as I'm aware. Combined all of these things to get some kind of peak performance out of it. But as we have always discussed, it's not all about peak performance. But it is interesting as to why these processes happen, and it can be entertaining in itself for me. If you go away and read about these things and just try and research as to why these things happen,
it adds
and how your body adapts.
Of enjoyment.
Exactly.
I say, and I think you certainly added that into my life, of really appreciating my shooting more, and actually wanted to understand it, not just going, yeah, I can kill that, bang, and making it more. Yeah. And I probably sounds a bit airy-fairy, but
But there is more to find. There is another gear or two to find.
Yeah.
So and it doesn't stop when you leave the peg. It doesn't stop when you leave the shoot. It almost is opening another door onto the next stage, which is then producing a decent meal. I firmly believe that you should be able to cook what you shoot, and that you should take great pleasure in getting from a basic, I produced a half edible meal there, to I produced a really special meal there. And that ability too is another, it's another level, another gear that you as a hunter should have. Not only, and in between that, there's almost another plane of good butchery, good game hanging, understanding what happens to the meat when you hang it properly. All of these things feed into what we do. The whole subject it has many levels to it. And I think they're all important.
A good friend of mine said to me the other day, he says, if you can't be bothered to spend 2 minutes, and he timed it, sent the film to me, he says, if you can't be bothered to spend 2 minutes, 30 seconds preparing a bird, you shouldn't be bothered to pull the trigger on it.
Not really, no.
2 minutes of your life for taking a life. I think that actually accepting that is part of the circle.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's why you will find, on my website, you will find not only articles about the scientific stuff about peak performance and the spiritual side from East Asian religions about how we should approach these, but you also find a whole load of recipes as well, because they're all part of what we do, and you really ought to be interested enough. And again, I mean, let's take another section of it, gun dog training. That bond between human and canine goes back eons, and that is another thing that we have brought to a level that we treasure now, and have taken into a complete new science almost of training a dog to be a hunting companion. And that is a hugely enjoyable, hugely rewarding part of shooting as well. And my dad isn't the only one who shoots less and less these days and works his dogs more and more. There are so many people out there who get more enjoyment in later life out of working their dogs than they do out of pulling the trigger. That's just development over time for many people who hunt and shoot and fish, or not fish, but
And it's always been the way. This isn't a new thing.
Exactly.
That the older generation let the younger generation do it because they. Whether they enjoy it more, whether they've had enough, I don't know. And I've heard so many explanations from older gentlemen of why they no longer enjoy it, why they prefer to work their dog, or why they're happy to just watch.
Yeah.
I presume
there's a myriad of different reasons, and it's all very personal and all very different for each individual as to why they do what they do. But I do quietly despair of people who haven't ever considered working a dog, or who haven't ever considered how to cook a pheasant, or how to put a decent pigeon breast on a plate.
I think there's probably getting a little deep now, or maybe we'll veer around it as a political subject, but I think we have seen a big change in shooting, game shooting. I mean, most of this conversation is game shooting.
Yeah,
it's entirely game shooting related. As we discussed, flow state has some place in competitive clay shooting, but mostly it's about real conscious decisions and staying and doing the same thing. It's a very different sort of kettle of fish. And I think there has been a commercialization. There has been a lot of commercialization over the last few years, and that has brought a very different person into the fore and has changed the way that people come into game shooting massively.
Yeah.
Meaning that they don't get, not taught, but anyone go, I fancy a bit of that.
Yeah.
And perhaps then their understanding has to develop over time.
It does, and my concern is not the fact that there is commercial game shooting available, because our businesses would not exist without it. And when it's done in the right way, it's absolutely great. And what it also does is it's broken down the barriers for people to get into the sport, which is also great. We want more people in this, but they must be able to then go on and learn about what we have already discussed in the last 10-15 minutes about the next level, the next gear, the associated skills that you need to garner to yourself, the character development that is available to you if you want to go down that route. And it's not for everybody, but there should be a wider appreciation of it, in my opinion. It's not just about standing ankle deep in empty shells on a peg. That's not what I want to do.
I think, I messaged you, I had one of the best drives of my life. Stood there and I shot 3 birds.
Yeah.
And I will remember that more than many other drives where I've shot proportionately more.
Yeah.
Because actually the enjoyment and the experience of 3 damn good birds that were presented to me, single barreling 2 and having one with the second, in a flow state was worth $1 million.
Yeah, just touching it, just touching that feeling within yourself of this is it. This is what we should be doing, of how to do things that effortless ability. And even if it only lasts for 1 bird, even if it only lasts for 3 birds, it's there and you've felt it and you've touched it. I had a day, walked up grouse shooting. I've told you about this before, I know, but
I'll listen to it again.
Last summer,
These guys haven't heard it.
No, they probably haven't. And it was one of the sporting days of my life where everything came together. The company was fantastic, the weather was fantastic, the grouse were there in numbers, although that didn't matter because everything else was absolutely special. I happened to be using one of my favourite guns and everything came together to make it just the most amazing memory that's still very, very colour-rich and vivid in my brain. I'll never forget that day because it was one of the best day shooting I've ever had. We didn't shoot hundreds, we shot some. But it was such a special thing to be on the roof of the world in Scotland, looking at this scenery and being able to know that you would go home with 2 or 3 brace of grouse each, something I love eating, and my kids love eating as well. Expensive taste, those boys. That's a worry, isn't it? And yeah, it was that the whole scenario came together to be a really perfect memory, a wonderful memory that will never leave me.
So, realistically, what we're talking about is just a wholesale different approach, a different outlook to game shooting from the start. Whether that the shot, the preparation, the attitude, just a slightly more old school attitude to what we see nowadays.
Probably.
And that involves the flow state that we talked about in the original video, which was kind of what piqued the interest of when we're sat here again now.
Yeah.
Do you think it starts from the shot and trying to get better with the shot, and that's what filters out into the rest of your shooting outlook?
Not necessarily. Well, not for me. It starts with the anticipation for me.
Okay.
The anticipation and the meal are the things that last the longest. The shot's over in under 2 seconds, under 1.5 seconds, mostly. But the anticipation
of developing your character into the appreciation of the other 2.
Well, no, I think actually developing your character means that once you start really enjoying the anticipation. I think that is a development of your character as well.
I mean, that starts from it. That's the first thing that everyone enjoys when you get your first day of game shooting. Everyone remembers the waiting for it.
Absolutely. I get excited a week before. You know, I'm laying out my clothes 2 days before. I'm getting my kit ready. And that is the anticipation that I had as a 15-year-old, a 14-year-old, and when I started, and that never leaves. So that is, a little insight for people who are starting, if they do get it, that kind of anticipation, that kind of excitement, they will then already understand the fact that it's not all about being on the peg, that there's more to it, and that after the shot, there's more to it as well. So it's there within all of us. If you're getting excited about your day shooting next week, you're already on the path to understanding the wider parts of this pastime.
One has to have some self-realization, no?
Probably.
It's part of this,
yeah.
Given what we discussed right at the beginning of this conversation about you not being able to hide any of your character flaws on peg.
Yeah.
Is it down to you? Or, all right, let's put you in this situation. You're with a potential friend. Mm-hmm. More an acquaintance than a friend, because you wouldn't have this person as a friend. You never shot game with them before, but you've been out with them a few times, and they act like a complete bellend on the first drive. Do you call that into question with them? Do you say...
It very much depends on the situation, but what it is an opportunity for you. If you find that upsetting, that's going to affect your shooting. So you have then got to get a control of your reaction, essentially, because you can't govern how you could have a word quietly, but it may not help. You could get the head keeper to have a word, but it may not help. You could get the shoot captain to have a word, but it may not help. And if it's dangerous, they should be sent home. We all know that. But what it is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your self-control over your reaction and how it affects you. Because you cannot control anything else in this world other than your own reaction to stuff. That's all you have control over. So if it upsets you, you're going to have to deal with that and put that to one side and crack on enjoying your day. So when those emotions turn up, and you get angry with somebody else's behavior, somebody's poached a bird off your barrels and then done it again, and then a third time, what are you going to do about that? Are you going to start poaching back? Are you going to let your anger come to the surface?
I suppose it depends who it is entirely.
These emotions, but these emotions are banging on your front door. Yeah, you have got to let them in because you cannot keep them at bay. They're natural reactions. You will get upset. But what you do is you let them in, you show them straight out the back door, you do not ever serve them tea. Don't let them stay. You've got to get rid of them and get on with your own enjoyment and your own performance.
So post-drive, one should have forgotten one's misses and one's bad period and focus on the good stuff?
Don't get upset with yourself. Yeah.
I
mean, if you are wounding more than usual, then you're going to have to take steps to avoid that, start reining yourself in, and also understand that if you do wound one, and we all wound them occasionally, sadly, then you have to understand that you have to go and talk to the picking up team and say, look, I hit this one hard, I think it's gone down over there, I've marked it to this bush on this hill. Would you mind, going to have a look for it? I think, I shot it a little bit backward and it's probably not going to run because, it might have a broken leg, but it may well get on and fly. Your understanding of how a bird reacts to your poor shot can help the picker up understand what it's going to do and how far it's going to go. If you've wing-tipped it, it's likely to run like a stag, and you're going to have to communicate that to them if you understand it. And you should take an interest in that part of it as well. Take an interest in your mistakes when it means ending the suffering of an animal you wounded.
If it was a deer...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The reaction would be unbelievably different if you...
Absolutely.
Gutted it and it had gone off.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just get back in your car and drive off and let somebody else sort it out.
No. Exactly. So take an interest in seeing that animal recovered.
It's just that, I suppose, relatively, it's about having a little bit more respect for the game, a little bit more conscious involvement in the other end of what's happening and not just self-involvement.
Yeah.
As much as there needs to be an element of self-involvement to improve yourself and develop yourself as a person. It's a
and actually you have to almost strangely you have to have an element of controlled aggression as well. You have to want to kill that bird. You can't go into it half-heartedly because then you more likely to wound.
Well, we've all been stood on peg with lower birds, and you don't commit. You don't want it.
Yeah,
and you just miss in front. You miss nowhere near it. There's no commitment. There's no connection with the bird.
Yeah, and it shows.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah,
and a beastie bird comes out after you've had a bit of a fluff, and you go, boy.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be beastie. It just needs to be one you'll want.
And you'll stand there and you'll think to yourself, well, why did I miss that? Fairly average bird and then kill the good one. We all have that feeling. And the reason is because you didn't really commit to one and you totally committed to the other.
There was no connection, you weren't paying attention, no work into that shot.
And you have to have, that's what I mean by an element of controlled aggression. It's not aggression, but it is that need to do it well. Yeah. And to do it well, you have to drive, you have to really get all of your whole body swing working
I
properly,
think you
and
find,
your footwork properly.
Honestly, what I have found is my limited flow experiences are when I want it.
Yeah.
I'm hungry for it. And
but it's not going too far with that.
Outside of shooting as well. It's when I'm hungry. I'm feeling competitive, whatever the correct phrase is.
Yeah, but it's not letting those emotions govern your actions.
No, but
it's being aware of them.
That seems to be the route in.
Yeah, it can be.
We've all woke up and not wanted, and we can put something with clay shooting, for example, because we're all excited when we go game shooting. There have been days where your head's not there.
Yeah.
You don't care.
Yeah, well, you get a snotty letter from HMRC, or you get, whatever.
A bad day at home, a bad day at work.
Yeah.
You turn up.
And it does filter into your performance, absolutely. And it comes back to being able to control your reaction to it. That's all you have control over, is your reaction to these external stimuli. Nothing else.
You can train for that, I presume.
Yeah. And we do it every day.
Yeah. It's the military do it very successfully.
Exactly. The point we're really trying to emphasize is the fact that there isn't one type of game shooting. There isn't one type of game gun. There isn't one type of game shot. We are all different in our own ways, and the conditions change as well. And you have to adapt to the conditions. You have to adapt to the style of shooting that you're doing. And you want to turn up with the correct equipment for that shooting. If you turn up with a heavy 32-inch over and under Parazzi and 36-gram 4s to a East Anglian partridge shoot, you're not going to look very clever, quite frankly. And I have seen it happen. And he was given some cartridges that were more suitable for the type of bird that he was shooting, because it's a food product at the end of the day, and he had lost sight of that. So, but it's also about not insulting your host as well. If you're invited to, a high bird shoot, you don't want to turn up with a 25-inch Churchill and ounce load 7s. Again, you're not equipped properly for the day. There are all kinds of different game shoots around the country, and there is not one to be sniffed at for any reason. It's about
which seems to be a strange modern thing as well.
It is, yeah. Where you'll get some shots.
That's a low bird shoot. There's a low
bird shoot. Well, that might be a low gun shoot up there. You could be. It's not for one to criticise the other, and it's
ability by how high a bird shoots you attend is it's strange, because
it is.
We would all like to go and shoot them, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's about you finding your enjoyment as well. Don't just dismiss an invitation or a day in East Anglia, because I tell you what, if there's a good 20-mile-an-hour wind and a southwesterly, and it's perfect conditions and a falling needle on the barometer, you are going to be tested. You really are. Trust me, because you will be obliged to shoot very fast curling birds, and not everyone can do that. So, and not everyone can practice that either. And it's very different to shooting a high straight driven pheasant. So it's about adapting to conditions. It's about not insulting the people you're with or the host, and finding your enjoyment in whatever day that you're engaged in as well. There will be some enjoyment. And if you really can't find that enjoyment, then you've probably got a lot of problems in your life that you need to address, to be honest. So, do try harder to find the enjoyment in anything that you're doing, because it is there. And if you're not enjoying it, then you're probably dragging everyone else down with your misery as well, and that's not really a good thing either. So please try and hide that.
What we're essentially saying is, if that's how the birds are shown, that is how you will shoot them.
Exactly.
Like, you're not... One has to read the birds. I think you see it all the time on videos and social media more than anything, of people commenting, it wasn't very high. It's dead.
Yeah.
It's clean.
I can remember. I can remember shooting. You've just reminded me of a day 2 years ago now with a very, very well-known game shot, very skilled game shot, and I was standing next to him all day, and it was a privilege to watch him shoot actually. But we had fog all morning, and on the way to the first drive, I said, "Look, we are not going to see some epic birds here. So how about you shoot everything over my head, and I shoot everything over your head, all right? And we'll do it that way, because we're well spaced apart. We're 40 yards apart, properly spaced guns, and a 40-yard crossing partridge is still a 40-yard partridge." Nice. He said, "Yeah, that sounds acceptable." And we did it all day. And we had a lot of fun together doing it all day, because we were congratulating each other and leaving stuff for each other, and it was a really enjoyable experience, even in the fog. So you can adapt to conditions, you can find your enjoyment out of any given situation. You just have to look hard enough.
Perfect. I mean, this has been a higgledy-piggledy, zigzaggy path
Always is
through various things. But I hope that you guys have maybe taken something away. And I don't want to say that people should look at themselves and their game shooting, but I think maybe they should in some instances. Certainly if you're coming from the clay field. I remember my first head keeper saying to me as a kid, he said, the day that you see him as targets, put your gun away.
Yeah, sell it, go and do something else, take up golf.
The day you see a game bird as a target, stop.
Yeah, he's right.
And I don't think I really understood it until I got close.
Yeah, and that's a scary place to be.
Yeah.
And then you have to, but you did well, you drew back and you reassessed your position.
Yeah, I think
that's what you've got to do.
That self-awareness that we've spoken about.
Exactly.
Is
and you've got to have, and it takes courage to do it, because there are plenty of, there's a lot of marketing driven at people, which is designed, around game birds as targets, and that's not cool. So you have to have the courage to challenge that yourself in your own brain and find your own enjoyment within this sport.
And we've spoken in a separate video about single shots, and we've spoken before about muzzle loaders.
Yeah.
We've spoken about various things that you can do to
absolutely
take the focus off of the bag and the quantity and the height and all these things, and actually just enjoy a different process of going out with your friends, shooting some birds, eating them, enjoying company, and really changing your own outlook.
Yeah.
Because I think it can feel shitty sometimes, actually, from the marketing and the push that's done to you, that you don't shoot 60 days of 400 birds.
Yeah,
and
because you think that's what everybody does. No, it's not.
That's what you need. If you don't have that, you're not happy. If you're not going up to Wales to shoot high birds every damn day, you're nothing.
No.
And that's actually...
Don't believe it.
It's difficult in the modern world, I think, in many respects, but just taking our portion of it as shooters, that it's weird.
Yeah.
But I think, again, subconsciously you can fall so foul to that.
You can. But on the other side of that coin is, the enjoyment I get out of having my children load for me. The enjoyment I get of leaving a bird for a neighbour because it's better. That's a really lovely feeling. You haven't pulled a trigger, but you've still got enjoyment out of your day.
And it is, as we said in the first, it's such a developing process, and you're not coming into game shooting looking to be the Zen master.
No.
You should be coming into it for whatever reasons you feel.
Well, whatever your starting point is absolutely fine. But do try and develop. Do try and adapt your approach.
Yeah, if you're acting the same on your 100th day as you are on your first, you've
missed the point.
Yeah, definitely. And I know it's weird because inherently driven game shooting is odd to many people around the world, and I have lovely conversations with a lot of people from various countries who don't get it. And I think a lot of what they see is we've made a conscious decision as a channel to move away from is the death porn, and they do just see it as thousands of birds coming over black skies, hit. They see it as very easy, very cold, just a day of death, and that is so far from the
reality.
Truth.
No, or it shouldn't be the reality, and I don't think it is the reality.
No. And I think there is a responsibility and an onus on all shooters who use social media or are active on it to perhaps try and show a little bit more of what it's actually about.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do really base it around food. Yeah, look at this food that I've got.
Yep.
But that is a very small part of it. Because if you wanted food, you go out with an air gun or a rimfire. It's a portion, but it's... I don't know.
There are many ingredients to this recipe, to use another food analogy, because we seem to focus on food analogies whenever we talk. But there is a whole list of ingredients that goes into making the communal hunt that is a day's driven game shooting, the special event that it is for us.
And every ingredient is delicious and can be explored and refined. And for me, that's exciting. From the gun to the shot to the company. And you can develop your company around you. That's an equally as exciting bit. Yeah. But this, as always, mate, has been fascinating. Good. And wonderful.
Again, it's always a pleasure.
Until next time, if there's anything you want us to expand on, or say us, Simon, to expand on, let us know, and we'll do this again, maybe in 6 years' time.
Perhaps. Let's not leave it that long,
next quarter.
Because they're good fun.
Yeah. Mate, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Come buy guns at Holt's.